Cyber Threat Brief for April 17, 2026. Apache ActiveMQ flaw now under active exploitation with CISA, the Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency, KEV, known exploited vulnerabilities catalog, deadline April 30. Microsoft Defender's zero-day Red Sun grants system privileges on fully patched Windows 11 and Server with no fix available. 3 Windows domain controllers entering reboot loops after April patches due to LSAS crashes in PAM environments. Here's the full breakdown of today's top security stories. Daily Cybersecurity Brief. April 17, 2026. Next section, Critical Alerts. Apache ActiveMQ CVE 2026-34197 added to CISA, the Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency, KEV, known exploited vulnerabilities catalog. Mid-active exploitation, a 13-year-old authentication bypass vulnerability in Apache ActiveMQ Classic, is now being actively exploited in the wild. CVE 2026-34197, CVSS, the Common Vulnerability Scoring System, 8.8, EPSS, the Exploit Prediction Scoring System, 6.2%/91st percentile, allows authenticated attackers to execute arbitrary code via command injection through the Jalokia API. The flaw was discovered by a Horizon 3 researcher using Claude AI. Threat actors can invoke management operations to force the broker to fetch remote configuration files and run OS commands. Default credentials, admin, are common in many environments. On ActiveMQ versions 6.0.0-6.1.1, another vulnerability exposes the Jalokia API without authentication, making effectively an unauthenticated remote code execution in those versions. Over 7,500 ActiveMQ servers are exposed online. Signs of exploitation include suspicious broker connections using the broker config equals xbean, HTTP//query parameter and the internal transport protocol VM, and 2 additional CVEs. See show notes for the full list. Action: upgrade to ActiveMQ Classic 5.19.4 or 6.2.3 immediately. Federal agencies must patch by April 30. Check ActiveMQ broker logs for xbean, HTTP// and connection strings. Audit all deployments for externally accessible Jalokia endpoints and restrict access to trusted networks. Why this matters? ActiveMQ has been a repeated target for ransomware groups including Tell You the Pass. This is the 3rd ActiveMQ vulnerability added to CISA KEV. Sources: Bleeping Computer, The Hacker News, CIS, A Security Week. Microsoft Defender, Red Sun, zero-day grant system privileges, unpatched. Security researcher, Chaotic Eclipse, has published proof-of-concept exploit code for a second Microsoft Defender zero-day in 2 weeks. The Red Sun exploit achieves local privilege escalation to system on Windows 10, Windows 11, and Windows Server 2019 and later, running the latest April 2026 security patches when Windows Defender is enabled. The vulnerability exploits a flaw in how Defender handles cloud-tagged malicious files. When Defender detects a cloud-tagged file, it rewrites the file to its original location. The exploit abuses this behavior through the Cloud Files API, writes ICAR to a file, wins a volume shadow copy race using an oplock, and uses a directory junction to redirect the file rewrite to C /Windows/system32/tiering engine service. EXE. The Cloud Files infrastructure then runs the attacker-planted executable as system. Huntress Labs reports the exploit is now being used in the wild, with Red Sun and Defend observed on a Windows device breached via compromised SSL VPN user access. Action: monitor for Red Sun, EXE activity and tiering engine service. EXE modifications. Microsoft has not yet patched this vulnerability. Consider additional endpoint controls until a fix is released. Bluehammer, CVE 2026-33825, was patched in April, but Red Sun and Defend remain unpatched. Why this matters? The exploit works reliably on fully updated systems. If paired with Bluehammer techniques, systems become highly vulnerable as Defender's protection mechanisms are bypassed. Sources: Bleeping Computer data breaches. Net. 17-year-old Excel RCE CVE 2009-0238 added to CISA KEVC IS has added CVE 2009-0238 to its known exploited vulnerabilities catalog. A 17-year-old remote code execution vulnerability in Microsoft Office that is now being actively exploited. The vulnerability has an EPSS score of 81.1%, 99th percentile, indicating extremely high likelihood of exploitation. Federal agencies must remediate by April 28, 2026. The vulnerability impacts legacy Microsoft Office versions and allows attackers to execute arbitrary code when victims open specially crafted Excel files. Action: patch all Microsoft Office installations immediately. Federal deadline is April 28. Block email attachments with legacy Office formats if possible. Why this matters: ancient vulnerabilities still pose real-world risk when systems remain unpatched for years. Source: The Hacker News. Next section: ransomware claims last 48h. 2 claims tracked across 2 groups in the last 48 hours. These are unverified claims from ransomware leak sites, not confirmed breaches. Group victim sector country: Prince Eugene Standard Bank Group, Financial Services, South Africa. Ransom Go Tip Technology, unknown. The Prince Eugene Group claims a 3-week attack on Standard Bank and Liberty beginning February 27, 2026, resulting in 1.2 terabytes of exfiltrated data from internal servers. Next section: ransomware and extortion. McGraw-Hill appears on Shiny Hunter's leak site after 13.5M record exposure. Textbook publisher McGraw-Hill has been added to the Shiny Hunter's ransomware leak site following an alleged Salesforce-linked misconfiguration that exposed 13.5 million records. Have I been PWNet confirms the breach exposed names, phone numbers, email addresses, and some physical addresses. McGraw-Hill described the source as a limited Salesforce-hosted webpage, though the data now circulating publicly exceeds 100 gigabytes. Shiny Hunters claims to have over 40 million Salesforce records containing PII and accused the company of failing to pay ransom before an April 14 deadline. Most Salesforce compromises stem from stolen credentials, abused OAuth apps, or overpermissioned integrations rather than Salesforce vulnerabilities themselves. McGraw-Hill stated the activity did not involve unauthorized access to McGraw-Hill's Salesforce accounts, customer databases, courseware, or internal systems. McGraw-Hill has not acknowledged the incident on its own website. Action: organizations using Salesforce should audit OAuth app permissions, review integration access levels, and validate that credentials for Salesforce-connected services are secure. McGraw-Hill customers should monitor for phishing using the exposed data. Source: The Register. Tennessee hospital breach affects 337,000 after Riceta ransomware attack. Cookeville Regional Medical Center in Tennessee was targeted by the Riceta ransomware group in 2025. With the breach now confirmed to affect 337,000 individuals. The group stole 500 gigabytes of data during the attack. Healthcare remains a high-value target for ransomware operators, with patient data particularly valuable on underground markets. Source: Security Week. P3 campus tip system breached. 8.3 million anonymous tips exposed hacktivist group Internet Yif Machine IM. Compromised P3 Global Intel's tip management platform used by 35,000 U.S. schools, exposing 8.3 million tips that were supposed to be anonymous. The 91.53 gigabytes dataset contains student reports on bullying, suicide threats, drugs, and other sensitive issues. IYM provided the data to DDoSecrets.org and journalist Mikhail Thalin, but did not make it public. However, the data is now being offered for sale for $10,000. Navigate 360, the parent company of P3, has not yet acknowledged the breach or that sensitive information has been compromised. Data breaches. Net confirmed that very sensitive information has been exposed, including tip content with identifiable details that compromise the anonymity P3 promised to students. Action: schools using P3 campus should notify students and parents that tip anonymity may have been compromised. Review alternative reporting platforms with better security practices. Why this matters: students reporting serious threats may now be identifiable, creating safety risks and chilling future reporting. Source: data breaches. Net. Next section: business and infrastructure threats. Cisco patches critical WebEx and identity services engine vulnerabilities. Cisco released security updates for 4 critical vulnerabilities, including CVE 2026-20184, CVSS 9.8 in WebEx services, and 3 flaws in identity services engine. IS is an improper certificate validation, flaw in the SSO integration with Control Hub that allows remote attackers with no privileges to impersonate any WebEx user and gain unauthorized access. Cisco has already fixed the vulnerability in WebEx services, but customers using SSO integration must upload a new SAML certificate for their identity provider to Control Hub to avoid service interruption. The 3 ISE vulnerabilities. All CVSS 9.9 allow authenticated attackers with administrative or read-only admin credentials to execute arbitrary commands on the underlying OS. In single-node ISE deployments, exploitation could cause denial of service, preventing endpoints from accessing the network until the node is restored. Cisco has no evidence of exploitation in the wild and 4 additional CVEs. See show notes for the full list. Action: Webex SSO customers must upload new IDP SAML certificate to Control Hub immediately. ISE users must upgrade to patched versions. ISE 3. 1 patch 11.3, 2 patch 10.3, 3 patch 11.3, 4 patch 6 or 3. 5 patch 3 for CVE 2026-20147. ISE 3. 2 patch 8.3, 3 patch 8.3, 4 patch 4 for CVE 2026-20180/20186. ISE 3. 5 not vulnerable. Why this matters: critical infrastructure for authentication and collaboration requires immediate patching. Sources: Bleeping Computer, The Hacker News. Claude Opus developed Chrome exploit for $2,283 in API costs. Anthropic's publicly available Claude Opus 4.6 model was used to develop a full exploit chain targeting Chrome 138's V8 JavaScript engine, which is bundled into current versions of Discord. Hacktron CTO Mohan Petapati spent 1 week, 2.3 billion tokens, $2,283 in API costs, and approximately 20 hours of human intervention to produce working exploit code. The exploit successfully achieved code execution, popped calc. Discord is running Chrome 138, 9 major versions behind current releases. While $2,283 is significant for an individual, it's far less than the weeks of manual work required without AI assistance and well below the theoretical reward from Google's and Discord's bug bounty programs, till to $15,000. Opus 4.7 has similar cyber capabilities with added safeguards to detect and block high-risk requests, but Petapati argues the specific model doesn't matter. As AI code generation improves, patch windows shrink, and every patch becomes an exploit hint. This is particularly problematic for open-source projects, where fixes become visible before releases. Action: Organizations using Electron-based apps, Slack, Discord, Teams, VS Code, should track Chrome version updates closely. Update Electron dependencies immediately when new versions release. Why this matters: AI is dramatically lowering the barrier to exploit development. The curve is not flattening. Source: The Register. Git identity spoofing fools Claude into approving malicious code. Manifold Security demonstrated that AI code reviewers built on Claude can be tricked into approving malicious code by spoofing a trusted developer's Git identity. 2 simple Git commands can set a fake author name and email, making a commit appear to originate from a legitimate maintainer. In automated review workflows, where the AI model gives weight to author identity, this allows hostile changes to pass review. Manifolds test targeted workflows configured to auto-approve pull requests from recognized industry legends, but real-world implementations often check org membership, past contributions, or maintainer lists with the same underlying assumption that authorship can be trusted. This is not a Git vulnerability. Commit metadata has always been easy to fake unless signing is enforced. The problem is treating that metadata as a signal of trust. A human reviewer might question why a particular maintainer is making an unexpected change, but automated reviewers follow internal signals consistently. If those signals include author identity, spoofing becomes a way in. Action: Do not configure AI code review systems to auto-approve based on Git author metadata alone. Require signed commits, GPG/SSH signatures, for trusted developer workflows. Implement additional controls that validate commit authenticity beyond name and email. Why this matters: open-source libraries increasingly rely on AI workflow automation, creating opportunities for poison packages to slip through. Source: The Register. Google expands Gemini AI use to fight malicious ads. Google blocked or removed 8.3 billion ads and suspended 24.9 million advertiser accounts in 2025, including 602 million ads tied to scams. The company is increasingly using Gemini AI models to detect malicious advertising campaigns at scale. Cybercriminals are now using generative AI to create deceptive ads rapidly. And Google says Gemini analyzes billions of signals, including advertiser behavior, account history, campaign patterns, and intent to determine whether an ad is malicious. By the end of 2025, the majority of responsive search ads created in Google Ads were reviewed instantly, with harmful content blocked at submission. Google says Gemini's accuracy has reduced incorrect advertiser suspensions by 80% and processes user reports much faster than previous systems. In the U.S., Google removed 1.7 billion ads and suspended 3.3 million advertiser accounts in 2025. Action: Organizations should educate users on malvertising risks, particularly for software downloads and cryptocurrency platforms. Use DNS filtering and browser extensions to block known malicious ad networks. Why this matters: Despite improvements, malicious ads still reach users regularly, and attackers continue to evolve cloaking and evasion techniques. Source: Bleeping Computer. Next section, Windows/Active Directory security. Windows domain controllers entering reboot loops after April patches. Microsoft confirmed that some Windows domain controllers are entering restart loops due to Local Security Authority Subsystem Service (LSAS) crashes after installing the April 2026 security updates, KB 5082063. The issue affects non-global catalog domain controllers in environments using Privileged Access Management (PAM). Affected DCs may restart repeatedly, preventing authentication and directory services from functioning and potentially rendering the domain unavailable. The issue can also occur when setting up new domain controllers or on existing ones if the server processes authentication requests very early in the startup process. Affected platforms include Windows Server 2025, 2022, 23H2, 2019, and 2016. This is unlikely to affect personal devices not managed by an IT department. Microsoft is still working on a fix and advises administrators to contact Microsoft support for business for mitigation measures. Action: Organizations using PAM with non-GC domain controllers should test April patches in isolated environments before production deployment. Contact Microsoft support if DCs are already in a reboot loop. Why this matters? This is the latest in a series of domain controller issues caused by security updates. Microsoft resolved similar authentication problems in June 2025, caused by April 2025 updates, NTLM failures in May 2024, caused by April 2024 updates, and released emergency out-of-bounds updates in March 2024 for DC crashes. Source: Bleeping Computer. North Korean Sapphire Sleet targets Mac OS with social engineering campaign. Microsoft Threat Intelligence uncovered a Mac OS-focused campaign by North Korean threat actor Sapphire Sleet that relies on social engineering rather than software vulnerabilities. The group impersonates legitimate software updates to trick users into manually running malicious files, stealing passwords, cryptocurrency assets, and personal data while avoiding Mac OS security checks. Sapphire Sleet uses Apple Script as a dedicated late-stage credential harvesting component integrated with decoy update workflows. By persuading users to manually execute Apple Script or terminal-based commands, Sapphire Sleet operates outside Mac OS protections such as transparency, consent, and control (TCC), gatekeeper, quarantine enforcement, and notarization checks. The campaign targets cryptocurrency, venture capital, blockchain organizations, and similar high-value targets. Microsoft shared details with Apple, which has implemented updates to detect and block infrastructure and malware associated with this campaign. The attack chain uses malicious SCPT files, multi-stage payload delivery, fake system dialogues, manipulation of the TCC database, persistence via launch daemons, and large-scale data exfiltration. Action: Mac OS users should update to the latest security protections. Security teams should monitor for suspicious Apple Script execution, unusual launch daemon additions, and TCC database modifications. Educate users on social engineering tactics, impersonating software updates. Why this matters? State-sponsored actors are shifting to user-initiated execution patterns that bypass platform security entirely. Source: Microsoft Security Blog. Microsoft's Original Windows Secure Boot Certificate. Expiring Microsoft's Original Windows Secure Boot Certificate is expiring, requiring one of the largest coordinated security maintenance efforts across the Windows ecosystem. Organizations should update affected PCs soon to maintain secure boot functionality. This is a planned security maintenance event, not an active threat, but failure to update could result in boot failures on systems with secure boot enabled. Action: Check with Microsoft for specific update guidance and timelines for your Windows systems. Test updates in non-production environments before widespread deployment. Why this matters? Certificate expiration affecting secure boot could render systems unbootable if not addressed. Source: Dark Reading. Next section, General Security News. Ghost breaches. AI-generated narratives become new threat vector. Security researchers have documented incidents where AI language models generate convincing, but entirely fictional data breach reports complete with technical details, named sources, and enough credibility to trigger full-scale crisis responses. In one case, a company faced a news story about a major breach that never happened, generated entirely by an AI system. In another, AI-powered news aggregators re-indexed years-old breach articles with new timestamps after a website redesign, treating resolved incidents as fresh stories. A third incident involved a cybersecurity publication running AI-generated quotes attributed to a real security researcher who had never spoken to the publication. AI systems now generate, amplify, and validate claims before security teams can confirm anything. Once a narrative enters the ecosystem, it can be ingested into threat intelligence feeds, risk scoring platforms, and automated workflows where fiction becomes signal. Security teams now need visibility into how their organization is being represented externally, not just what is happening internally. This creates a new class of false positive, where fabricated breach narratives appear credible enough to trigger internal investigations, executive escalation, and defensive actions. Threat actors can weaponize fabricated breach narratives as pretext for phishing emails or IT impersonation. Action: security teams should implement monitoring for external narratives and references to the organization in security contexts. Establish rapid validation processes when breach claims surface. Include AI-generated misinformation scenarios in incident response planning. Why this matters: the assumption that something real happens before you respond is breaking. Source: Cyberscoop. CrowdStrike selected for OpenAI's Trusted Access for Cyber program. CrowdStrike has been selected for OpenAI's Trusted Access for Cyber (TAC) program. OpenAI released GPT-5 for Cyber, a frontier model designed for defensive cybersecurity, with access through identity verification and tiered controls. OpenAI models are already in use across the CrowdStrike Falcon platform via AgentWorks, CrowdStrike's agentic AI framework. The CrowdStrike 2026 Global Threat Report documented the fastest e-crime breakout time at 27 seconds in 2025. As frontier models reach production, the volume of findings they generate will outpace what human teams can process manually. CrowdStrike tracks 280-plus adversary groups, generating real-world attack data that determines which vulnerabilities matter most. The Falcon sensor observes AI agent actions at the endpoint level: commands executed, files accessed, network connections, processes spawned. CrowdStrike has visibility into more than 1,800 distinct AI applications and nearly 160 million unique application instances. The EU AI Act's next phase takes effect August 2, 2026. Source: CrowdStrike. Next section: Patch Priority. Apache ActiveMQ Classic. Upgrade to 5.19.4 or 6.2.3. Active exploitation confirmed. CIS a KEV deadline April 30. Cisco WebEx SSO. Upload new SAML certificate to Control Hub. Critical user impersonation vulnerability fixed. Cisco ISE. Patch to latest versions for CVE 2026-20147. Critical RCE and Enterprise Authentication Platform, and 2 additional CVEs. See show notes for the full list. Windows April patches, KB 5082063. Test before deploying to domain controllers in PAM environments due to LSAS crash/reboot loop issue. Microsoft Office Legacy. Patch or upgrade systems still running old Office versions. 17-year-old CVE 2009-0238 now actively exploited. Next section: Vulnerability Disclosures. Multiple Industrial Control System vulnerabilities disclosed by CISA. ISA published advisories for vulnerabilities in Anvis access control products, Delta Electronics ASDASoft, Aviva Pipeline Simulation, and Horner Automation, Seascape PLCs. The Anvis advisory covers 12 CVEs affecting CX2 Lite, CX7 access control devices, and cross-checks standard software. Vulnerabilities include unauthenticated photo capture via post, unauthenticated debug configuration disclosure, unauthenticated modification of debug settings, enabling SSH, and authenticated command injection, leading to root-level access. Anvis did not respond to CISA's coordination attempts. Delta Electronics ASDASoft CVE 2026-5726 is a stack-based buffer overflow triggered during parsing of malformed PAR files, potentially allowing arbitrary code execution. Fixed in ASDASoft v7.2.6.0. Aviva Pipeline Simulation allows unauthenticated attackers to modify simulation parameters, training configuration, and training records via privilege escalation. Fixed in 2025 SB 1P01. Horner Automation allows brute force password discovery due to limited password complexity and no input limiters. Fixed in Seascape v10.2 SB2 and latest XL4/XL7 firmware, and 2 additional CVEs. See show notes for the full list. Action: organizations using affected ICS, industrial control systems, products should apply vendor patches immediately. For Anvis products, restrict network access and enforce strong authentication since vendor patches are not available. Why this matters: ICS vulnerabilities can lead to operational disruptions in critical infrastructure sectors. Sources: CISA IX Advisory, CISA IX Advisory, CISA IX Advisory, CISA IX Advisory. Multiple third-party component vulnerabilities in Microsoft Update Guide. Microsoft published multiple CVE, or common vulnerabilities and exposures. Disclosures for third-party components used in Microsoft products including JQ JSON processor, SBDY stream, SymCrypt, libsh, and Prometheus. The JQ vulnerabilities, CVE 2026-33948, include embedded NUL truncation, algorithmic complexity DOS, missing runtime type checks, integer overflow, unbounded recursion, and out-of-bounds read issues. Affects SBDY stream with DOS on CRI. Affects SymCrypt with heap overflow via 64 to 32-bit leaf count truncation. Affects libsh with insecure default configuration on Windows, leading to local man-in-the-middle attacks. Affects Prometheus with stored cross-site scripting via metric names and label values. Is a Windows Admin Center elevation of privilege vulnerability and 10 additional CVEs. See show notes for the full list. Action. Apply updates from Microsoft Update Catalog as they become available. Most of these are informational disclosures for component issues. Monitor Microsoft security guidance for specific remediation steps. Why this matters. Third-party components in enterprise software often contain vulnerabilities that require vendor coordination to fix. Sources. Multiple MSRC security update guide entries. Like botnet exploiting end-of-life TP-Link routers. CVE 2023-33538. Palo Alto Networks Unit 42 analyzed active exploitation, attempts targeting CVE 2023-33538. A command injection vulnerability in end-of-life TP-Link Wi-Fi routers, including TLWR 940N, TLWR 740N, and TLWR 841N. The vulnerability was added to CIS a KEV in June 2025. Observed payloads are malicious binaries, characteristic of Mirai-like botnet malware. Exploits attempt to download ELF binaries using wget, grant execute permissions with chmod 777, and execute the malware. Unit 42's analysis confirmed the underlying vulnerability is real, though the specific in-the-wild attacks observed were flawed and would fail. Successful exploitation requires authentication to the router's web interface, but widespread use of default EOT credentials makes this a practical infection vector. TP-Link confirmed the affected devices are end-of-life with no vendor patches available and recommends replacing units with supported hardware. Action. Replace end-of-life TP-Link routers with current models. If replacement is not immediately possible, ensure default credentials are changed, disable remote management, and segment EOT devices from critical networks. Why this matters. Botnet operators continue to target known vulnerabilities in unsupported devices that remain deployed. Source: Unit 42. Next section, Trends and Context. Today's brief highlights the shrinking window between vulnerability disclosure and exploitation. Apache ActiveMQ's 13-year-old vulnerability went from discovery to active exploitation within weeks. Microsoft Defender 0 days are being weaponized immediately upon public disclosure. AI-powered exploit development is collapsing the traditional patch cycle, with Claude Opus generating working Chrome exploits for $2,283 in API costs. Organizations can no longer rely on the assumption that they have weeks or months to patch after disclosure. Defense requires faster patching cycles, better segmentation to limit blast radius, and robust detection for post-compromise activity. The rise of AI-generated content also introduces a new threat vector: fabricated breach narratives that trigger real-world crisis responses before security teams can validate whether incidents actually occurred. That concludes today's cyber threat brief. From Carolina, Clear Tech. Stay patched, stay vigilant.